Kia ora, welcome to the show. Today we are taking on the topic of brand refreshes. It's a topic that's been quite prominent of late. Articles like the flippening from the guys at the B2B Institute have been talking about the increasing importance of brand and a need to shift from performance marketing to brand marketing. So with part of that, I'm expecting and we're expecting that we're going to see a bit of a renaissance of the importance of brand. And because of that, there might be a little bit of conversation around, should we rebrand, should we start again, should we refresh, should we tweak what we've got? So today, we are talking with Shannon Bayliss. He's been the creative lead here at Blue Ocean in the seat for nearly 10 years now. I've worked with Shannon on a number of projects and he's been a core part of some of our most successful brand work here at Blue Ocean. So a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all things brand and refreshing. So Shannon, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dale.
Thank you. We've come all the way from your desk and mine, which is a million miles away.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 meters, but you know, we're here.
We are
in the room.
Awesome. All right, now there's a lot to talk about, but first and foremost, talk to me about your socks. What are we wearing today?
All right, so I mean, you know, maybe about 5 years ago, I discovered merino. And I suppose that came from a background of living in Wellington.
Pretty cold?
Pretty cold. You kind of need woolen things to survive down there. But also, you know, just before having our own home that's insulated, you know, you live even in Tauranga, you need something on your skin that's warm. And so, I find these, they last a good year or two.
Which is pretty good going for a pair of socks.
Pretty good going for a pair of socks, and you just wear them all the time. Obviously not in summer, but
100%.
Yeah, just
fantastic.
Your feet don't smell as much.
I like that. That. I have the Fat Controller from Thomas the Tank Engine. He's got very, very strange little red eyes.
Oh, nice. He does.
Christmas.
Yeah, he is hungover.
Christmas present from my mum. So thank you, Mum. Also the shirt. Rocking my mum's clothing. Yeah. Cool. All right. So to the matter at hand, brand refreshes. So first and foremost, let's get some clarity around what we mean by that. So what is a brand refresh?
Well, I suppose a brand refresh could be anything from looking at an existing business. I suppose that's the first criteria.
Yeah.
And determining, you know, what you know, usually they would be looking at a business that has a little bit of heritage. It's been around a while. Maybe that brand or the business itself has shifted in some way from its product offering, from who its customers are, and that brand may not be doing them much of a service anymore. So you'd be looking at, you know, logo and all of the assets, you know, visual assets, colors, typography, tagline, and usually with a refresh, you're not starting with a lot. But you are starting with something. So you are starting with something, and you probably wouldn't have assets like audio and, you know.
Yeah, okay.
All of those.
So
non-visual assets.
Would it be fair to say then that, you know, you're talking about taking something that already has a little bit of traction behind it and already has sowed a bit of a seed in the mind of the market, maybe owns a bit of a space already and is looking at going in a different direction. If it then kind of correlates with a change in direction, what then is the role of brand and strategy? How do the two of them combine? What does brand deliver to strategy that strategy can't deliver to brand?
Right, so, I mean, before even thinking about rebranding, you probably need to understand who your customers are.
Makes sense.
Which sits squarely in the strategy phase. What your value proposition is to them, and what your objectives are in terms of marketing. So that's where I would start.
Yep.
Before thinking about whether a rebrand is the right approach.
Is the right thing.
Because otherwise you're probably just going to create something that's not not any more effective than the original brand that was probably thrown together by an accountant or
Hopefully not
a student or somebody without brand knowledge.
Yep.
You know how businesses start.
It's very organic. Things develop.
Potentially product focused in the early stages to begin with. Somebody just starts a business, gets it going, has success for 10, 15 years, and then they've got staff, they've got they've grown, and now they're thinking, well, what's the future of this business? I have a few challenges. How do we grow to the next phase? Usually, it's about growth, right?
Yeah.
It's we're dissatisfied. The past has been great. The whole journey has been great, but we want to go further. Yeah.
Now that's an interesting one because there can be a number of different catalysts for that. Like you say, growth is going to be one of them. One thing that you see relatively often is that you get someone new at the desk. You get the new marketing manager that comes in and they're there to prove themselves to the world and rip the Band-Aid and start afresh. What advice would you give to people who are looking, who are in that situation? You're new to the role. You feel that, maybe the brand that is behind you isn't going to help you achieve what you need to achieve for this business and you want to rip the Band-Aid. What do you do then?
For that person that's new to the role, what I would recommend is, if you're thinking about a rebrand in the back of your mind, or maybe the front of your mind, you go, God, this is so old. Make sure you talk to the founder of the business.
Yep.
The CEO, whoever it is who started it. We have pitched a rebrand before, and I won't name names, but that didn't go down well because we thought we'd come with a creative idea, and they were very attached to what they had. And
it was an extension of themselves.
It was an extension of themselves with a lot of meaning behind it. So even if you don't want to ask for permission to begin with, find out the roots of the brand.
Yep.
Find out what has underpinned the business from the start, from a passion perspective, from who the business owner is.
I really like that. It fits as well with a lot of the stuff that certainly Ritson would talk about, which is go back to the roots, back to the founding fathers and mothers and people of the business, and understand what sparked it originally, because there's often really, really good stuff to be found there. There's another area here as well, which is around building the credibility to ask for something like this. From a marketer's perspective, if you're new in the role, don't turn up on day one. Don't turn up on day one and say, this brand is awful, it's not going to achieve X, Y, and Z. Spend a bit of time, get your feet under the desk, build a logical argument that actually says, look, we need to do this because it's preventing us from doing X, Y, or Z. Yeah,
well, it's going to take time to build that logical argument anyway. You're going to need to understand your customers, segmentation, all that sort of stuff that you would do as a marketer new to the role. And part of that would be, looking at your competitors. What is the space that you're playing in? So before you're pitching that rebrand, you're going to need to do a lot of learning. What you might call a brand diagnosis.
Yep. Okay, now that's a great segue. So one of the I guess the decisions that you have to make at a brand refresh stage is, what do we kill? What do we keep? There's always it's very easy to want to just rip the Band-Aid and start afresh. That's a much more clear-cut approach from a marketer's perspective, certainly, or a brand manager's perspective. Very, very easy to get everyone excited about everything's new. It's great, doesn't it look fantastic?
Yeah.
But how can you prioritize what you kill and what you keep from the existing brand?
So I think the first thing to remember is, whether or not you like it or not, there is heritage in that brand, and if it's a gaudy colour, you're like, this doesn't reflect the industry or whatever. Just remember that that brand might be doing its job, whether or not you or the people who work for that business like it or are sick of it.
You're not the customer.
You're not the customer. And so can you go back to the question?
Yeah, so we were
Because my
just-
mind's going in a bunch of different directions, and I want to answer what you've
Okay,
asked.
so we were talking about what tools can you use to make the decision around what you kill and what you keep. Using ourselves as an example here, we've got this visual of a baby with a beard, which some people love, some people hate. Nearly everyone remembers when they've seen it. And we've made conscious choices there about whether we kept or killed that.
Yeah.
So how did we get to that point? What's the process there?
Well, the framework to think about your brand, or one tool could be brand codes.
Yep.
So first, just identify all your potential codes. Obviously the logo, the business name is a code. If you have a tagline, you'll have some colors. You might have a font or a typographic treatment in some way. You might have packaging. You might have a mnemonic or a sound.
Yep.
Also, your codes can be your people, can be the founder of the business. So really important to sort of take that into account, especially in B2B. When the face of the founder is
part of the value proposition
and what has grown the business to its current size. So identify those codes, and you can. There is a bit of a grid that relies on data to plot.
Yep.
In terms of measuring uniqueness, fame.
And that's the Jenny Romanchuk work?
That's the one, yeah.
That's the distinctive assets grid, is it?
The distinctive assets grid.
Say that 10 times fast.
So if you want to do that properly, there's a process. But it is a good way of just sort of thinking about, how important are my assets? How likely are they to be to play any role in making the brand easy to recall and remember? So something like your color, you might think yellow. We've used yellow everywhere, and we're kind of sick of it. Should we change it? And while that color may not bring your brand to mind instantly, you might find that you can't separate it from your brand because it has that.
It's a part and parcel of what the brand is and what it stands for and how it's seen and remembered. I remember when we took on the brand refresh for Killwell Fiber Lab, that was one of the things we addressed there, was that you had this really, really solid, iconic, bold yellow colour that had been used almost for 90 years straight. And there were components around it that deserved to be carried forward. And then some that we just needed to remodel and revamp and evolve.
So in that instance, we recognised that Killwell was a 90-year business. Killwell Fiber Tube was not as old, and the fiber tube part is probably the least memorable part of that business name. Killwell or Killwell Sports definitely has equity, and we recognised we're not going to touch
touching that bit
at all. So we, and in that case, we wanted to bring a refresh. And that came from a strategic level as well.
Yeah, that was all about positioning differently and moving in a different direction to actually, make sure that the business was attracting the right customers for growth.
Yes. So we went from Fiber Tube to Fiber Lab, which is a kind of a small but significant change in positioning.
Yep.
So it was a positioning to particular customers. So the segmentation, targeting, and positioning was all part of that process.
Yep.
So if you're a marketer, you should know what that is.
And you should have done it.
And you should have done it. So, but tube being the commodity part of what that business was being perceived as providing. Yep. So part of the strategy was to make it make Kilwell Fibre Tube be perceived as a business that no longer provided a commodity.
And we're shifting into the,
shifting into the R&D, the research and development and product design space, so Fibre Lab.
So the classic
So I've laboured that point a little bit, but the point is, fibre tube was, if we saw that, if we plotted that, we would find that fibre tube was an asset that we could drop as long as we kept the others.
Yes. Yep. No, that makes complete sense. A pretty classic archetype of the time and place where a brand refresh is the right thing and makes good sense. So let's talk about the full rebrand, because again, coming back to jolly old Mark Ritson, his advice would be that everyone should do one once and only once ever in their career, once to experience the pain and the challenge that comes with it, and then once so that they never do it again. I would liken a complete rebrand as like you turning up tomorrow in a wig and a dress. Like, you'd still be Shannon, but you'd look completely different. I wouldn't be able to recognize who you are, like what's this all about. It's very jarring. It takes a little while to adjust. So you've been through full rebrands?
Yep.
What are the stories? What are the war stories from the front line of the brand, of the full rebrand?
War stories.
There's always more work than people expect, right?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons a business may be hesitant to do a rebrand is I think, I've got to pull down my signage, got to reprint all my collateral, so they'll wait until they're running out of brochures. And then it's like, oh crap, we're running out of brochures.
Better rebrand.
We need a rebrand in a couple of weeks. And then what inevitably ends up happening is, okay, we've identified that we want a rebrand, but we're just going to print a few more brochures. I don't think we've luckily enough haven't seen any rebrand go wrong. Obviously, because we're an agency, so we provide a service, and somebody can purchase a rebrand and then go and take that rebrand, and we're happy to work with others and happy to pass things on to internal designers and things. But one thing you do see is when a business may not have that internal resource of a designer, and so you've spent all this time analysing codes, reintroducing new ones, strengthening others, and presenting that rebrand, creating a brand book. You've got buy-in from everybody. Everybody's excited, and you check in a little bit later and see what's been produced from it, and you're like,
you've gone off piste.
So that's one thing I would be aware of, is who you're bringing, who are your partners in pushing that rebrand out through your whole organisation. That's
a really interesting point. And certainly one of the things that, certainly in small and medium businesses, the marketer can often find themselves in the hot seat. They are, if you're the only marketer in the camp particularly, there's a huge expectation of, you should be able to tackle this and tackle that and do the website and SEO and rebrand. And you're never going to be able to deliver all of that, and it actually sets people up for failure. So who would you, if you were in a client-side marketer, who would you add to your war party for a rebrand? Who would you bring along for the ride, and why?
Well, I hope you would bring me along for the ride, Dale.
I would.
Agencies are good. Agencies are awesome, whether it's us or another agency or a digital marketing agency. You bring in the experts.
Yeah.
They have designers. They have a good eye. They have good taste. They have experience interpreting brand books, just like us.
Hey, there's an interesting. Sorry, I just want to pick up on something really quickly there, because one thing that I think you've seen, certainly in the creative industries over the last maybe 10 years, shall we say, is that there's been let's say a focus on creativity for creativity's sake. Effectiveness is becoming the new currency, I think, of successful advertising and marketing and thinking. So how does that play out? How do you ensure that you're bringing someone in who's actually going to give you advice that's coming from the perspective of effectiveness, i.e., maybe don't necessarily do the full rebrand, do X, Y, and Z, because that will impact. So how do you trade off between pure creativity and creativity that's powered by smarts and insights and data and customer insight? So what would you look for? If say for example, you were maxed out, our team here was completely stuck, couldn't get anything done.
That's a good way of framing it.
Yeah. What sort of agency would you look for?
Yeah, I would look for somebody who has integrity, who is going to say, not just go, you should have this, and you should have this, you should have this, and you should have this. That agency should be able to look at where you are as a business and prioritize. We're thinking about it currently for a client. There's stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Of a where we think they could go as a business. Integrity says no. Let's make sure we nail one first before we go the full hog. So ideas are great. You could pitch step 1, step 2, step 3, or just pitch step 3 and they'll be excited, but then there may not be traction. So some realism.
Realism, I really like that.
Yeah.
And that, I think, plays out in the internal politics of something like a brand refresh as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that certainly I've seen is sales can often be one of the big drivers. If sales are fed up of looking shabby, that can be a huge catalyst for change.
Yeah.
And from a marketer's perspective, having sales on board makes all the difference between something working and something not, because
I mean, you've often said that sales can be the loudest in the room. When something's not right, and when they don't feel like they have what they need from marketing, or the brand isn't working for them, or the collateral isn't working, or they feel like they're showing up to meetings and it's just cold, and customers haven't been primed with the brand. So having sales on your side, when pitching a rebrand, you obviously want the business owners to feel excited, and you want that glint in their eyes when they start to see, oh, actually I can see this. But if sales goes, damn it, we're doing this or I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the result that you want. You want the sales rep, the sales manager to be super exciting. And I think we've had that before. We are doing this or I'm leaving.
Yeah. They're one hell of a crowbar, the sales team. Yeah. They really, really can be.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think they'll often bring to the table, though, is an element of pragmatism. It's very, very easy to get excited about a PowerPoint where everything looks fantastic, and visuals are easy to get hot and sweaty about, right? They're appealing. But if you've got that bit of sales pragmatism on board as well, that says, okay, the mileage testing. How are we going to put this here? How are we going to use it here? How's it going to help me in a sales meeting?
Yeah.
I think if you can get them part of your journey, you can go a lot further, a lot faster with a brand refresh.
Yeah, for sure. I think as a designer, when you're working through a rebrand, you focus on a few core things, assets, and then the next step is to see how that translates. And so if the sales team come and say, look, I need these this is the priority list, and obviously with marketing as well, map out that priority list, then you can road test that brand and build the brand book later. You might have a light version. So building that brand will take time, and testing it in different environments and making adjustments as needed, and doing that with the client, will always produce better results. But yeah, I haven't been a part of a rebranding process where we just deliver everything once and it's just this is final. The website's perfect, your sales collateral is perfect, all of your internal documents and letterheads and business cards are all perfect. No, it's a process. And yeah, so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that you might pitch that new logo and those new codes or whatever, the new tagline, the new positioning, but the job's not done. Yeah, work with your sales team and marketing to get it.
I think that's a really good word to the wise. If you're approaching a rebrand and you're thinking about a refresh, whatever, don't expect to nail it on the first pass. We were at an event up in Auckland a while ago, and there was a company up there that were talking about how they brought their whole company along for this big old rebrand, and the advice was recognize that it's as big of a business decision as naming your first child.
Yeah.
Really, everyone has an opinion, everyone cares, everyone's got a reason why this or why that shouldn't be. Solid advice. Don't expect to nail it the first time round. And one thing that you've talked about in previous videos is using strategic tools to justify creative decisions.
Yeah.
So the strategy canvas, you've talked about that in the past. Give us a little bit of a run through about how some of those strategy tools, like a strategy canvas, can help justify and defend a creative position.
For sure. So, having experience in design, early on in my career, I relied on marketers, usually marketers, to provide a brief, and you want everything answered in there, from who's the target audience, give me a little bit of color around who they are, what's our message, what's our CTA, give me all of the channels, give me the copy, and
give me everything.
Give me everything. Give me the image, so I don't have to think because your deadline's ridiculous. But moving on from that stage, as a creative, you want to build that brief yourself. You want to be saying, you want to be filling in that color, and so being as a designer or a creative of any kind, when thinking about a brand, you want to be involved in that in the early stages of that strategy process. So one tool that I have loved using is the strategy canvas, which is gives you a lot. It gives you a map of the market of your competitors, where the industry status quo is in terms of the
who's doing everything the same, right?
Yeah, competitive elements. Yeah. Where are people competing? Where are your competitions over delivering or delivering high or high value or low? And then you map yourselves against them, and in addition to that, you might look at it and say, you make some strategic decisions about how much value.
What do you dial up? What do you dial down?
What do you dial down? And you can add new elements. And when you add new elements, that really, that's a differentiation piece. That tells you how to make this brand different from its competitors.
And I really like the fact that it's completely sterile. There is zero emotion in looking at a bar chart.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a bar chart with colours and numbers on it.
Because when you then get to the creative piece of brand, it's incredibly subjective. You know, it's your design.
I hate yellow.
Yeah.
or I don't like the font, So you know, when presenting that rebrand, you know, having that strategy canvas, you know, probably a simplified version of it. You can use the language from that strategy canvas and say, we would like to reposition your brand to align with these 3-4 things.
Yep. And then you're presenting stuff that could be interpreted subjectively, but you're doing it against cold, hard numbers and facts, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's a great way of tackling it. We're going to wrap things up, but I think there's been some really, really solid takeaways from this. So for me, what I've taken away from this conversation is, first and foremost, if you're going to be going through a brand refresh, make sure you understand the strategic direction you need to align to. First and foremost, that's an absolute must. Next, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Understand that there will be some elements within, you know, the existing brand that you may not like, but who cares? You're not the person that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the market. We're dealing with the customer.
Yeah.
So make sure that you prioritize which assets to bring forward, which codes to bring forward, what to kill, what to keep, what to create. Then when it comes to actually bringing everyone along for the ride, as a marketer, build credibility.
Yep.
Spend the time to make an informed recommendation that this is a thing you should be doing. Don't turn up on day one and expect to be able to convince someone that this is the right thing to do.
Get sales on your side.
Get sales on your side. So important, because they're the petulant child in the room when they're not happy. Sorry, sales.
That's true. Yep.
They're the one, but they have so much sway. Their role ultimately is to convince people. And if you've got them on your side, as well as then hopefully the founders and the leaders who will have shaped the business along the way, if you've got all of those things in place, you should have a recipe for success. Even, dare I say it, if you want to go the full whole hog and rebrand the whole thing, rebadge everything. Yeah. If you've got those things in place, I think you stand a much better chance of doing this successfully. So, look, awesome conversation. Thank you very much, Shen. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And thank you everyone listening. The viewers at home, thanks very much. That's us for now.